Alright guys, well welcome back to another weekly shrine review for today. And today we have a pretty interesting mix of perks, so let's get straight into them. First up we have Technicians, a perk from Fang Mins. And essentially what this does is it makes it so that whenever you're repairing a generator, the noise that you make while you're repairing, not the actual generator noise, but the actual noise of you repairing it. There is a few different noises if you haven't heard it before. Well, if you start listening for it, you'll absolutely realize where it is. And it makes that noise a little bit quieter. It reduces the distance that you can hear it from basically by 8 meters. On top of that, if you miss a skill check, it also has a between 30 and 50% chance, I believe, to not actually lose any progress whenever you miss or sorry, not make an explosion when you miss a skill check, so the killer wouldn't know you were there. Technician is honestly a perk that you generally run as a newer survivor because you're not as confident with skill checks, so I don't really recommend getting this one in the shrine unless you really have a difficult time with skill checks. Now for our next survivor perk, we have FlipFlop, a perk from Ash Williams, and essentially what this does is it makes it so that whenever you're slugged on the ground, if a killer picks you up and you've recovered all the way up, or sorry, at least however much you've recovered, basically it'll give you 50% of that back in your wiggle bar. So if you've recovered, let's say 80% before the killer picks you up, then on your wiggle bar you'll automatically start at 40% of the wiggle bar completely filled up. Now this goes from a max of between 40 and 50 once you get to tier 3. And it's a really fun perk to run if you know a killer, or sorry, if you're running a build or running with friends in a way that you know you're gonna get slugged. You don't see this perk too often as a killer, but when it does show up, it actually ends up catching you off guard a lot of the time. Unfortunately, most killers do tend to pick up pretty quickly after downing somebody, so you don't really get too much value out of this perk, but when it works, it's pretty fun in my opinion. Do I think it's worth getting? No, not at all. This is not a great perk, in my opinion, at least. Now let's go over to our killer perks. First up, we have Mad Grid. This is a perk from the Legion, where basically whenever you're carrying somebody, you have literally zero cooldown for going for a swing as long as you miss. If you swing and miss, you can just keep spamming the swing over and over again. You actually end up gaining a little bit of distance over time if you do this over and over again with Mad Grit. But secondary effect of Mad Grit is whenever you have someone on your shoulder, if you do actually manage to hit somebody, then hitting that person will pause the survivor in your shoulder. It'll pause their wiggle timer, or their wiggle meter for between 2 and 4 seconds. This is really solid when you know a team's going to go for a lot of body blocking, and it helps you so much. If anything, you make extra distance if you can hit people. So honestly, I don't think this perk is too worth getting from the Legion, but it's definitely a really fun one, especially. I mean, I personally love running it on Demogorgon. It's really funny hearing Demogorgon just screech over and over again while you have someone on your shoulder. Now to our last perk, we have Bamboozle. This is a teachable from the clown, and this is a perk that's really interesting. Basically, it'll up your vault speed between, I believe it's 5 and 15% depending on what tier you have. And whenever you vault a window, it'll make it so that window gets blocked off between 8 and 16 seconds. Now, I don't think this perk is worth running at tier 2 or 1 at all, because you really do want the full 16 seconds that you get. But I think this perk definitely has its use. A lot of the time, if you use this perk, however, survivors will just run away from whatever window you vaulted, and they'll just end up making enough distance to get to a different window or a different pallet. So you don't really get the most use out of it on most maps. But if you really force a survivor into a back corner where they only have 1 or 2 windows left, and you block off that window with Bamboozle, you can make it so you're guaranteed to get a hit on them. And this will also help you out on some maps that have really strong windows as well. So, at the end of the day, do I think this is worth getting? Again, not really. But it's definitely something that if you do get, you can mess around with and see whether or not you like it. There's a lot of killer players out there that don't like it. There's some killer players that do like it. I personally rarely run this perk, and that's just personal preference in my opinion. But anyways, guys, I hope to see you in the next week.